rose-stained glass, the heavy lidded shuffled, bearing hot tins of sliced Peking duck, succulent bok choy, and delicate pork wontons. And then our progeny music from the garden ambled down to the schnitz, and flamenco dancers went hand in hand with coffee roasters and single mothers. That night I began to write my top 10 memories of the green chair. 1. The green chair was the width of a 3-year-old. So when stretched horizontally across your legs, I was perfectly encapsulated by its soft, mushy arms. And you put cherry blossoms in my curls. 2. I'm tiny, hiding from the babysitter behind the green chair for hours. She's losing her mind. She's talking about calling the police. Later, you tell me this is a brutal prank to play on someone's first day on the job. 3. We go to the rodeo for the 4th of July, and until the explosions begin. I bury my face in the lower corner, hoping the green chair can swallow up my ears and make fireworks never happen again. 4. Rocking softly by the wood stove, burning the logs of unsold Christmas trees. We didn't celebrate Christmas, but we grew the trees for those who did, and you said something important about others worshiping in their own ways. 5. In the season of the mustard bloom, when those wineries came with their out-of-state money and the gravel roads all got paved, you brought 12 soaking laborers to our house for hot oolong tea, and they sat in the living room, dining with green chair, and you said something was wrong with their wages. We drove them back to the vineyards, their legs hanging over the tailgate of the Ford, our hair frizzed and sprinkled with rain, yellow everywhere. 6, we didn't call it bullying back then. We just called it a hard day. In Los Angeles, you can lose a lot more than your honor. You can lose your whole self. A teen has no reliable way to verbalize the internal disturbances that follow an assault, so you listened instead with your eyes. It made me wonder, who was so cruel to you that you vowed to be kind? Or, who was so gracious to you that you had nothing but good left to spare? Put me in my chair, please. I cannot stand again. And through that pleather from the foam, a cheery perfume of Douglas fir. 7, I'll do homework forever. Let's see if we can squeeze into the green chair and read our essays together. Let's apply for college together. Then 8, the look in your eyes, reading scholarship letters, sitting in the green chair. And 9, when you started sleeping all the time, it was nice to see the comfort that that green chair could bring, when a vitamin regimen couldn't, when a drug couldn't, when Chinese medicine couldn't, once even I couldn't. Then 10, a few hours after you died, rocking horribly, white shock, hissing through the nerves. This isn't really a favorite memory, it's just the last memory. I knew in that moment the green chair was much too precious to sell, too functional to throw away, too onerous to keep. It would have to be set on a pyre built of unsold Christmas trees, atop a raft of cherry blossom trees, and driven out to Pacific City at night, under the cover of the Tillamook County haze, to be pulled out of the back of the pickup truck and dragged across the sand into a cold and unforgiving sea, to be set ablaze by a sapling arrow, shot from the top of a sand dune, with an arrowhead you scavenged from the desert as a child, lit up by the color from my hair. Tell me that that would be a worthy death for one item, owned or touched by you. In blue velvet consumed, we'd all like to be on motorcycles in June, riding to the wedding of our favorite childhood friend. And are you not the will of that executor? We've been out to the storage unit to put our hands on everything we own, finding out you can't schedule yourself out of your pain. I'm sure I see you on ships, a little book in the hand, a little box with a locket, tiny vials inside with sweet oils to dress what leather remains here. To be sure of a thing, you really have to believe in the entirety of it. The moment you stop trusting math, for example, all those numbers lose their brilliance. Perhaps you've seen the Gorge or the American Dream burning. Now our valley fields are covered with antiques, scattered copper pans and window adornments where elk should walk, but no longer do. If I swipe over you, will I stop believing in it? Will you dress for the life you wanted, in a skirt like a cover letter, with time, imagining two kissing girls, one named Pain, one named Potential, in a china cup at a bull auction? Imagine the fibers of those strong ropes, rough against mounds, and once our immediate needs are met, your animal can sleep here, in my moonlight. This next poem is about the Gordon House. Has anybody here been to the Gordon House? It's one of the only Frank Lloyd Wright houses in our region. It's in Oregon, and really easy to visit. It's a kind of a lonely place. If you go take a tour, you'll almost always be the only there. But they run it like a tiny museum, and yeah, you can just drive up and tour around this beautiful, beautiful home that he designed. That is an incredible piece of architecture, specifically life and how to best function in a domestic space. So knowing that I was going to be writing about growing up in rural Oregon, I wanted to set a poem in the Gordon House. So this poem is called In the Gordon House. Remember when you felt this way before? All those dots are the campfires of the gentle people. Welcome to my home, the less complicated girlfriend. In West Lynn, a flailing, repetitive motor movements in an attractive mom community swimming pool. Lay down your seamed and seamless things, prism of ryegrass seeds on the rim of the before bed lamp, pyramid of dim schooners in the margin. We could talk about the many terrible things that led us here. But where is here? Could we name a better shed for these fickle hands? Every 2 weeks on payday, I feel so ravenous for my handsome surgeon, those nimble fingers on the scalpel, those knowing tongues, their long, wide charts. Every digital bit of the March wages is for her, the learned woman who cut me up while the rain fell on the theater goers in Ashland. And they say that spring is the only revolutionary whose revolution has succeeded. So let's say that something urgent and vital moves within. Who believes you? Who believes in you? Are the gates of paradise going to feel like a homecoming? Or will it be like how it is here in the dreary hotel, laid out in a soggy ditch, or at the Lafayette Opiate Diner, or maybe just upstairs? Will we be able to reach inside, at once distant and present? Will it be a new omnipresence, or truthfully an old one? I will send wrens to trace that path, and oaked breezes to cool your shoulders. We've all lived in each other. I wish you could have seen the piano. The sheer will in that church-like bookstore. And the halo of friends standing over our promises, our tiny diamond, a softer haze in the city, with crying couples in the bluegrass kissing. These days it feels like every canyon bend is for money. But if you cross the river, you can still see some of the old hopes. We've been working on eye contact, so the future is on everyone's mind. Beyond these filberts, a star opens and promises us high-speed rail. After this new beauty, there will never be another candidate. Now is the time to fix things, some cognitive, some behavioral. You got the hot jazz that you wanted, a bay window, my lower belly, and that large Art Deco piece. So is it true that the goal is just to drink better and better bottles of wine? When you're with your smart colleagues, do you hoot, "This is the best wine in the world," and still know that it gets better? I don't know if I could ignore that massive mounting pain and focus on getting a job in my field. Only one of us did. Only one of us did, and she said, "It's not scary talking to inmates because you're just Skyping with them, really. They don't even know your full real name." The bed is finally the right size, and still most nights we fall in shivering with our 3-step regimens. There are too many splinters in that new desk and me, and if I do call out, I want to use my full real name. Here we stand at the climax of a long, hot season, open-mouthed at our vastly changed selves, bearing witness to the fruits of those plans we so hastily scribbled on gritty porches, sleeping in cars, tasting each other's truth and walking in shallower oceans, learning about the scent of loss, desperate for guidance or context or meaning, with so many questions and just a few answers. Do you think peace could be more than an absence of war? More than inherent goodness and healthy commerce, and rest or road trips or dinner parties? Could you make someone your entire spiritual hay barn, raised and then raised? It must need to happen because it just keeps happening. To write a favorite memory and tie it to a ribbon, to rustle its neighbors like February branches in lone fir where others are engraved, is not enough. We organized this for you, for a sweet ordinary man for whom a simple glass of milk and a chopped apple could be pure pleasure. The river could not know your name. You are already everywhere. Okay, and then I'm going to do one longer piece. Thank you. Thank you. So this one is not done. This is something I've been working on here at Sou'Wester. I do really love when other artists share work in process and also talk about process, so we can continue to iterate on things and hopefully improve our craft, or at least edge closer to what we're sort of aiming for. So yeah, it's a little vulnerable to share something that's not done, but I want to just try. And also to say, to equally set the stage and say I welcome your unfinished work this weekend. So I think this piece will eventually be called The Sixth Phase, and it's kind of about cell division. I want to write about each stage of cell division and things replicating, and obviously during COVID I was thinking about viruses and viral spread and things replicating and growing and things like that. So I think it will be something in that lane or that wheelhouse, and this is really not even going to be the full thing. This might be the prologue to that piece. But this is the, so let's say this is the prologue for what will be called the sixth phase. The sixth phase. In the dark, there was nothing else to do. Build a new room so the wide world can see. Big, so everyone will know the shape of her. To make something so large, we would need a framework for quantification. Okay, so let there be numbers. You know about 0. Try believing in 1, and then keep counting. If you took all the love in your heart, and your mind and body and spirit, and your butt, and everything we've spent so much time learning, do you think you could leave it here? I'm not saying it's healthy or safe, but it can be done. And when you're done, what's left is not a honeyed joining or a rough division, but a pool of soft energy swirling in on itself, collecting moons, cool, dark, and cleansing, sweet all over. It's okay if you want to swim in. I did too. Before sound, there was only this swirling, this language that our hands knew before we had hands. So let me tell you in that way how her thighs tasted and all, and let me be thus concentrated. Wow, I so wanted to see her flowering. I so wanted our commune in the cloud, concatenating at the function, mapping a square plot, original but not new. All in, investment and admission. I begged, I'll sign in lemonade in that heat dome. She seeped over like cream, till fall filled and felt, mutual in the dahlias mustering, dressed to the nines, those chords in a bowl like dust in a blender. My video spread milky in the pre-dawn. Nothing with a handle on it. But after universal basic income, it's just gonna be me in the dirt. No more resilience. No more busy with this cone gaze. Just full-time light on light. Kneeling again, opening up to talk to the gods. Please, send us down a rope, something to tug on. Teach me how to become kinetic possibility again. Of course I will adore you. We were alive, that part I know for sure. And now we're here, and we're still alive, but it's kind of worse. And we have to listen to voicemails. I've been whining about that for ages, and I'm sorry for being horrible, but I did finish the monument. I needed more sand, to be honest, much more sand. But some days you have to call it. And when I took a step back, what I saw was something new. It was so enormous it almost had nothing to do with her. Don't do it, Joni. Don't pin a girl to a concept board. She's a full, real person with a full, real name. At 0 again, I see it all in full flop sweetness. The gender of the joke. The sun runneth over. If there was a game, it wouldn't be this leaving obsession. It would probably be something less like numbers and more like swimming. But whatever it is, I leave it here in the observable universe. In the dark, there was nothing else to do, and you would have done the same. Thank you. Kicks off the beginning of the Lodge series. We're going to have art here all day, all night. Does anyone have any little question or reflection or anything they want to say or ask?
Is your book published?
Yes. This is a little chapbook published by a tiny Portland publisher called Future Prairie Press. And it is at Powell's, kind of. It's like, it was on the shelf, and then they didn't have that many, so they sold out. So then it's like, if you want it, they have to order it, which is kind of awkward. But you can buy it from Powell's, or you can just buy it from Amazon, which is, you know, not the best. But yeah, it's called Your Full Real Name. Yeah.
Thank you for reading that piece in process.
Yeah.
So much of it hit me so strong, and then it just went away again, which is like sparkly somehow. So thank you.
Yes, yeah, thank you. It's funny, lots of beach imagery working its way in, which I didn't expect, but we're so near, how could it not? Yeah. Great. Anything else? Great, let's call it. Thank you for coming, and can't wait to see all the rest of the art this weekend.
Sit where? Four chairs. I wonder if there's anywhere we could pull. It's on the ground.
Yes.
Yeah. There's four chairs.
Lots of chairs. What do you want to do? Arms, no arms. Like if you're holding chairs in your bag, just like that. Yeah. Plug against the chairs.
I find that pretty cute. Yes. Well, that is so true. Yes, this is very dark. Yeah, no, it's I don't know, thank you. Very effective. Very good.
Yeah, I want to read it because the words were so complex that I realized there's too many last layers that you go into. A word projected so many.
I got a text from my son asking if he could get on that. It was just so funny. I was like, I'm not in charge right now. I'm like, sorry, that's really funny.
Yeah. Want to go back and birds to the ground. Yeah. 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 Kind of indicating. Yeah.
It's lovely. I know.
Yes.
I do not.
That's true.
Yeah.
Maybe some. That might be too much.
I don't know if we're really that close friends. Where did You're performing. Okay.
Here?
I strongly prefer not to do that.
Okay, I'm going to kick us off and just introduce this project that we're going to share with you. We're Sunday Theory. We are a writing
Sometimes Performance Collective. We've been working together for 8 years. And this project is something we started in 2019. It's pre-pandemic, and we were gonna imagine it as a performance, and then COVID happened, and we turned it more into something that could potentially be published as like a manuscript. So we're gonna share, and in the spirit of Joni's thing about process and kind of trying to share things that are not fully complete. I think a lot of what we're gonna read is stuff we wrote this week. At least what I'm gonna read is some stuff I wrote this morning. So that should be perfectly shaky. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, and broadly, our theme was talking about failure and collectivity. I think as we've come to write this, we've, kind of shifted how we relate to those terms. But essentially, we each took one kind of story or moment or theme in our collective's history and wrote an essay or essayistic piece about it, kind of thinking through those ideas. So I'm going to start. My part is about a studio space that we shared early on, like just about a year into our collective formation back in Olympia. In 2016, we all lived in Olympia. Still, we struggled to meet, a logistical problem composed of structural forces intersecting with individual capacities that we referred to in shorthand as the problem of getting 4 people in a room together, a misquote from a lecture we attended on heterochronicity. I worked full-time in student services at Evergreen, the college from which we had recently graduated or would soon graduate. I remember feeling exhausted, ashamed at my exhaustion, pinning my exhaustion on the job, on my sluggish thyroid, maybe the weather, maybe I was depressed. But we were all depressed. We all had jobs, complicating factors, diagnoses and undiagnosed symptoms. We couldn't figure out how to materialize our visions of collaborative creative process. We couldn't figure out how to get together, how to get anything done, how to get anything done together. During this stuck-in-the-mud time, we heard that a studio space was opening up on the 2nd floor of the mixed-use building downtown at 1112 State Avenue Northeast, the same building where I used to attend therapy appointments. The room was small, with a sash window that looked out toward a parking lot, a blonde wood floor, and freshly painted white walls, a blank slate. We dreamed this room would be the solution to our vexing, unsolved equation, a third space beyond the dull feedback loop of home and work. After the initial deposit, rent cost $250 per month, which, split 4 ways, was $62.50 per month each. It seemed a small price to pay for the gift of guaranteed togetherness. We would be compelled to get our money's worth, carefully counting out the coins of collectivity. After we met the landlord at a Starbucks to pick up the studio keys, we moved in, high on the spirits of adornment. How would we fill this container? We stacked milk crates into makeshift bookshelves and assembled a library of shared texts. We put a wheeled desk in the corner that held a massive silver iMac monitor. We brought an electric tea kettle and mismatched mugs. We installed an overstuffed mossy green couch draped with throw blankets. We made it cozy, full of creature comforts, our den of study. We told ourselves, if we build it, we will come. So we came. On a Saturday or Sunday morning, we dragged ourselves into frame, apologetically late, restless or uneasy, but not sure why. We came hungry, underslept, jittery from caffeine. We assessed progress on our nebulous goals. We didn't accomplish as much as we hoped, and the studio's 4 walls stared at us with reproach. But too, there were moments of loveliness and influence. I delighted to witness the traces of process. Lucian wrote an essay about cannibalism and translation. He cut the pages into pieces and scattered them across the wall in search of sequence. V constructed a shoebox diorama depicting a good first date on the Rainbow Pier. The scene solidified gradually in painstaking detail. Evelyn hung large sheets of newsprint from a performance about water that she and V had composed. In dripping blue paint, we saw you in light only, You are in mazes too. Our studio was not the space of individual genius chipping away at the masterwork. Rather, it was blurry, permeable, a sidelong, fits and starts niche of activity. Many artists believe in the necessity of a room of one's own, which is to say, solitude. The New Yorker article, Artistic Strategies for Co-working, a breezy art historical take on early pandemic conditions, cites Romaine Brooks, who wrote, "I can think of my painting only when I am alone, even less do any actual work." Franz Kafka, who wrote, "I must be alone a great deal. What I accomplished was only the result of being alone." And Agnes Martin, who wrote, "When you're with other people, your mind isn't your own." That last statement, however, chimes to me a different bell, inflates a buoy. When I'm with other people, my mind isn't my own. Rather than a pro-solitude slogan, this could be read as a rallying cry against isolation, solitude's shadow side. My mind isn't my own because it resounds with the words and cadences of others, friends, books, songs. As Lucian wrote in The Commonplace, Sunday theory is both an outside space and an inside space. I go out into the world to find you all, but I can also go inside of myself and find you. This is the beauty of having a name, an organizing principle. The organizing principle of the studio is its constraint, a space dedicated to a single purpose. At home, one's energies are divided, tugged by responsibilities of family, housework, bodily maintenance, reproductive labor. Art is possible in such spaces, but requires workarounds and sleights of hand to squeeze it in between the constantly proliferating day-to-day tasks. However, creative spaces that emphasize productivity to the exclusion of the body pose their own challenges. As a collective, we've run into this friction time and time again, the concrete brutalism of the college campus and the sterile modernism of the convention center, the timetable of rushing from one program to the next without any gentle nudge back into an embodied state, even though embodiment can slow things down, especially because embodiment can slow things down, even though embodiment can interrupt the work, because embodiment is the work, is inextricable from the work, as ideas incubate in our fleshy brains and travel through our limbs onto the page, psychotechnology of connection. Beyond the studio, we've discovered a hybrid space in our retreats, self-organized gatherings oriented toward creative experimentation. Retreats overlay a creative space onto a domestic space. We write and we read and we think and we talk, but also we relish the slivers of in-between time, unstructured exchanges while cooking a meal, resting, getting dressed, waiting, walking. These moments cultivate the soft padding of intimacy. I couldn't help but glow with recognition when V wrote, "I stayed to see Claire spread many pads of butter across warmed bread." They were writing about how Sunday theory, membership within this social body, allowed them to notice and respond to their own body with all of its idiosyncratic needs by modeling a central ethos of bodily tending. Whenever we trouble ourselves with the question of our metacognitive mode, our ongoing documentation, our self-mythologizing, and ask if we are navel-gazing unbecomingly, I think of this experience of being witnessed in language. When we spend time together and consequently show up as figures in each other's writing, we see ourselves perceived, recognized, and beloved through another's eyes, representational intimacy. In a conversation with poet Lisa Robertson published in Scapegoat Journal, the interviewer asks, "Could you give a small mental tour of the shelters you have inhabited in pursuit of learning?" Robertson responds, "I wouldn't say that I found this place or others in a search of learning. It was more like a search for an emotion of freedom. This freedom sensation has been aligned with certain architectures and economies. Reading and writing have at times become guides to this alignment, and so have friendship, cooking, travel, retreat, conversation, gardening, most of the Epicurean practices." In our early years, shared space was essential to establishing our foundation, a rich soil of mutual affinity tilled by accumulated interactions. The studio was one more cradle in Sunday theory's becoming. The first, a red Nissan Sentra on a road trip to the And Now conference in Southern California. In such close quarters, bodily needs were undeniable. Stop to fill up the gas tank, stop to find a bathroom, stop for cup noodle and hot Cheetos. Though we were still nascent, gelling, we offered our nervous systems to one another, plugging in whenever we needed support to rev up or chill out. In the spring of 2017, Evelyn left on a long road trip, and we found a studio subletter who quarreled with the landlord. The cognitive load of managing these logistics, interpersonal, administrative, financial, outweighed any lingering benefits of maintaining a dedicated creative space. So we broke the lease and moved on. This is the crux of why we identify this studio story as a failure. We sensed the tides shifting. We abandoned ship. The studio era was over. We transitioned from studio to its counterpoint, field. A few months after our studio collapse, I moved from Olympia to Oakland to attend a graduate program in creative writing. I twinged with unarticulated doubt as the first to leave the nest. Evelyn moved to Portland in 2019 for an AmeriCorps position. V moved to New York in 2021 to study public transportation and placemaking. Later in 2021, Lucian moved to San Diego, also for a graduate program in creative writing. Olympia emptied out. Though our attention to the collective waxed and waned, we retained our threads, our knots. Not dissolution, but extension. Not rupture, but reach. In our new remote formation, we became four corners, a mobile geometry continually reshuffling across time and space. Between us, a speculative studio shimmered like a hologram. I wonder how we might inhabit a studio today in the wake of 8 fluctuating years of collectivity. It's hard now to recall the luxury of sharing a city like a single spacious garment, proximity's stretchy waistband. March 2023, the crocuses peak their white and purple heads, and the Easter bright hyacinths waft a sweet aroma. In Seaview we convene, 4 points among many. We reach our arms to the sky in the corrugated light of the geodesic dome, clink petite goblets of frothy juice in hues of orange and green, sip unending cups of coffee with cream, breathe deeply in the cold plunge until the icy bite disappears, replaced with elation. We fall again into the choreographies of living together, calibrating the beats of attunement and individuation. When we moved out of the Olympia studio after breaking the lease, we felt sheepish but workmanlike. At this point, Evelyn had already hit the road. We hefted away the milk crates full of books and binders and stapled packets. We dismantled the fluttering works in progress. We swept the floor. The final task was to remove the couch. Somehow, when we moved in, we had easily carried it up the stairs and into the room. But when Lucian V and I attempted to maneuver the couch out through the door, it wouldn't fit, no matter the angle. When we first attempted to finish this project on failure and collectivity a few years ago, my mind seized on this tableau. The studio bare, the couch in the doorframe like a cork plugging the mouth of a bottle. Us at its back, pushing, in vain. I wanted to write this anecdote as an allegory, a story that contains another story in its shadow, but I'm afraid I can't interpret the situation with a light touch. I would rather choreograph it as a dance. Imagine 4 dancers on stage. 1, alone downstage, stands in spotlight. 3, center stage, light diffused, surround a large plywood cube. The solo dancer moves freely and spontaneously, but sometimes looks over their shoulder to watch the other 3. The trio exchange positions, 1 pulling and 2 pushing the cube, or vice versa. Sometimes they're perfectly in sync, and other times they seem to be working at cross purposes. Sometimes one of the 3 must sit or lie on the floor. They turn the cube onto various sides, lift it above the ground, lean it precariously on an edge or a corner. The negotiation of this opaque physical dilemma continues for a long time. There's no music, and the dancer's breathing is audible, as well as their shuffling feet, bare against the smooth floor. Occasionally they laugh. The audience realizes that they aren't sure what a resolution to this dance would look like.
I don't remember whose
idea it was to write an artist's statement, whose idea is not really the way things work for us anyway. We who gather on the same document in the digital ether, write our lines to each other's voices, who pass the references back and forth over the years, the batons of our friendship. We outlined the assignment. Each of us would write our own draft of the statement, and then we'd work them together. I imagine we'd fashion the finished piece like a quilt, lines from each draft carefully cut out of their individual context and rearranged to form a kaleidoscopic pattern, a prismatic history of ourselves as a collective, separating the light of our work together into its elements as we turned from one paragraph to the next. What happened, as I remember, is that nobody did the assignment. When we met the next week, we each had to admit that we'd all felt too intimidated by the prompt to start. So we lowered the stakes and gave ourselves another week to work on it. It failed to appear on anyone's desktop again at the next meeting, and after a few weeks, it quietly fell off the edge of the to-do list. We let it, thinking it might decompose and come back again later, a volunteer in the compost, emerging into the air of a more suitable season. The artist's statement did not, in fact, go quietly. It didn't decompose and reemerge later when we were ready. It didn't disappear into the deep crevasse where unattainable dreams go to languish when we've given up on them. Our failure to write the statement stuck around, an ambivalent spirit wandering the rooms of our meetings. It lingered in our mouths, taking on the slightly acidic tang of embarrassment. Our resistance, if that's what it was perplexing. Perhaps we did not understand the assignment, or we didn't have a clear idea of how we would use such a document and couldn't find the motivation in the absence of a concrete application. I felt this failure as a puncture in the hull of the SS Sunday theory. Water seeped through it, heavy like doubt. What if we couldn't write an artist's statement because we hadn't actually done any art yet? We were meeting every week. We had our snacks, we did our readings, we took notes. We had a name, we called ourselves. But in the absence of any completed collective works, what kind of public statement could we make? What I've shared here feels like an accurate accounting of the artist's statement story, but a perusal of the archive of writing and emails has proven me wrong on several accounts. We had, by the time we began working on the statement, completed plenty of work together. Our first trip as a fledgling group of friends was a spring break trip to a writing conference in LA. We were head over heels in love with the sudden, imminent sunlight, with writing, with each other, and all we wanted to do was do things with words. I remember writing everywhere we went that week, taking notes around a wobbly metal table in the verdant back patio of the Venice Grind, adding lines to each other's exquisite corpses at the dining room table with my mom, sprawled out on the bare hardwood of the living room, listening to someone reading something out of their notebook, inviting my high school friends over for a party and preparing our writing prompts. We did try to write an artist's statement, and we did fail to complete one, that much is true. But the plans and experiments went on for months, years actually. In the emails and drive folders, I found notes typed up from brainstorms and drafts that one or another of us wrote. These drafts all start with a short description of us as a group of writers and friends, succinct and professional. They inevitably fall apart when the author attempts to construct a meaningful simulation of the ever-changing universe of social contexts, aesthetic phases, orientations to various institutions, facial expressions and gestures, diverging and converging political beliefs, artistic heroes and intellectual forebears, emergent ways of being together, likes, dislikes, historical analyses, moments of shared pathos, all the mundane and salient experiences of our togetherness in their infinite complexity, and running underneath and through it all, our love and fierce devotion to language. In truth, what we were attempting wasn't an artist's statement. We were Sisyphean cartographers. We aspired to make a map of the territory of our relations, so accurate as to be indistinguishable from the territory itself. The grand impossibility of our project anchored us to it like gravity, as we dutifully compiled the annotations, outlines, transcriptions, lists, and minutes, as we watched them accumulate in the archives of our inboxes, as we excavated the stratified documentation of our history compressed by time. Even if this monumental project could ever find a conclusion, who would read it? And what would it possibly mean to finish it? One rainy spring afternoon during a lull in our work on the statement, we went to visit with Miranda. We've told and retold this story so much that I hardly remember any of the details. I think maybe it was just the two or three of us. I remember waiting in the echoey concrete seminar building with the large windows. sitting on boxy industrial furniture upholstered in a vibrant chartreuse. I remember how the warmth of her office seemed to emanate from her person, seated behind the desk, surrounded by books and papers. Like the temperature of the room was an atmosphere she created with the softness of her voice, the coziness of her limited but beautiful selection of sweaters. I don't recall any particular question we were there to ask. She inquired about our meetings, what we were reading, how we spent the time. We answered honestly, describing our mercurial approach to production, our emphasis on tending the body, on friendship. I doubt that her ethics diverged significantly from any of our practices, but she told us, "You have to write every time," and we took her to heart, abashed. Sometime in that first year or two, Lucian sent a quote from an article about the Canaries, which quickly became canon. The Canaries were a group of female and gender non-conforming artists with autoimmune diseases that gathered to exchange coping skills and support. Their practices of mutual care helped them process the impediments that illness and disability present to anyone working under a capitalist ethic of production, even, perhaps especially, those producing art. The Canaries referred to themselves as an informal support coven, and their slogan, "First order of business, be together," quenched an unidentified thirst. Over the years, we have repeated it to each other many times, each refrain a deep, refreshing draft of self-recognition. We understand well the aggrieved relationship with productivity, the struggle against the constraints of time and the body, even if we'll never comfortably relate to the language of disability. The constraints proposed by our bodies are not evenly distributed across each member, nor are they stable over time. They have at various periods included attention problems, allergies, anxiety, autoimmune disorders, constipation, depression, dysphoria, disordered eating, dissociation, fatigue, hormone imbalances, insomnia, long COVID, migraines, suicidal thoughts. When V had a day-long headache this week, Claire recommended the bag of frozen shrimp on the forehead to numb the nerves, and Lucian offered gabapentin. When Lucian had sharp pains in his stomach, he found temporary relief in the weight of Ruby's velvet head. The meeting with Miranda was only a microcosmic example of the tension we sometimes feel around our disdain for the impossible standards of productivity that capitalism imposes and our desire to meet them. As Lucian has written, we desire to put on the suit, but also to be honest that the suit is itchy and does not fit well. Imagine a wall that stretches between two lanes. We can call them action and inaction, or making something happen and making nothing happen. The experience of finding a way to get past that wall is different for everyone. Illness, stress, financial pressure, precarity can make the wall higher, more challenging to scale. Collectivity, too, can hinder the climb sometimes, even as it offers a boost at other times. We wanted to hear more from our mentor about the sometimes impossibility of crossing over that wall. We wanted to see her at the top, holding out a hand, or to hear her revving up a jackhammer on the other side, getting ready to bust a hole through it for us. In many ways, the way we were taught to write was an analog for the mode of production we were theorizing our opposition to, particularly in the demand for excess. If we had set our sights on generating anything, we'd need more time, more space, more practice to produce the surplus, the waste, the bad ideas, which are the grease upon which the good ideas slide in. Drafts, darlings, and outtakes. In the writing pedagogy we'd received, we'd sometimes pick up on a distinctly capitalist note, with its emphasis on increasing capacity rather than recognizing limitation and restraint. My friend Zoe, who works as a life coach and has fielded a lot of people's private anxieties about this kind of thing, recently reassured me that everyone is uneasily participating in the collective delusion that people who work 8-hour days are actually working for the whole 8 hours. Of course, there are many people who work jobs that keep them occupied for the full duration of their shift. Nurses and teachers probably don't suffer the same harrowing ennui that has plagued me in the many office jobs where I showed up to guiltily trade hours of reading Twitter in exchange for money. My neurotic adherence to the strictest and most literal interpretation of the perceived expectations I am laboring under extends to every area in my life overseen by an institution. In the absence of an explicit agreement with an authoritative body, I am plagued by the same discordant earworm that has lodged itself in the minds of so many artists, that timeless classic, "Oh no, I'm not doing enough." This might be some version of the imposter phenomenon. Recent discussion of the 45-year-old theory has sought to situate it more carefully within a social and economic climate whose characteristic drive to optimize and streamline all aspects of life seems to have successfully colonized every emotional and relational niche, no matter how sacred, tender, or private. Says scholar and critic Rebecca Harkins Cross, capitalism needs us all to feel like imposters, because feeling like an imposter ensures we'll strive for endless progress, work harder, make more money, try to be better than our former selves and the people around us. It gets harder to rally behind the progress driven by capitalism if it is the case that the cost of that progress is an inherent sense of belonging, a deep assurance that you deserve to be here, regardless of your productive output.
I'm a little bit wishing we had orchestrated an intermission. But anyways, and I'll start with a quote from Fanny Howe on bewilderment, which Evelyn and I bonded over in a class we took called How to Do Things with Words. So here's your quote. There's literally no way to express actions occurring simultaneously. If I, for instance, want to tell you that a man I loved who died said he loved me on a curbstone in the snow, but this occurred in time after he died and before he died and will occur again in the future, I can't say it grammatically. You will think I was talking about a ghost or a hallucination or a dream, when in fact I was trying to convey the experience of a certain event as scattered and non-sequential. I can keep unsaying what I said and amending it, but I can't escape the given logic of the original proposition, the sentence which insists on tenses and words like later and before. In the undergraduate course where Sunday theory first came together, called Writing as Experimental Practice, our instructor turned literary crush turned mentor and eventual friend, Miranda, introduced us to the concept of parataxis, an alternative to the more familiar mode of hypotaxis. The etymology of taxis as arrangement, combined with hypo, meaning under or below, together indicate a temporal, linear relationship within language where some clauses are subordinate to others. I will wait to hear from you before making my decision. This is an example of a sentence in the hypotactic mode. On the other hand, parataxis, where the prefix para means side by side, offers a flattening surface over which the comings and goings of thoughts and feelings, reason and causality slide back and forth without sequence. And there was light, and God saw that it was good. This is an example of a paratactic sentence. In grad school, while studying architectural forms and traditions that pull from a logic, aesthetic, or function outside of the Western architectural canon, I once again found myself thinking of parataxis, and literally thinking paratactically. The ancient neighborhood in coastal Algiers, known as the Kasbah, set in motion this side-by-side thinking, which I began also to think of as a kind of layering, of beginning and doubling back, and also of leaning into the future, grabbing hold of something, pulling it back into the past, and playing with it there. I began thinking of the possibility of an architectural style being called into being from a future in which it's needed. Let me say more about the Kasbah, which I think of as an architectural form that insists on being spoken of within its own contextuality. Not unlike the way Claire disarmed at the task of standing in for the whole, blurted, "We're not all here," when Aaron came to say hi in the trailer doorway. And the way it felt almost urgent to correct Bella, who was under the impression we were a throuple, because only 3 of us were present, by noting that we were in fact 4. "No, we're a quadrahedron," I said clumsily, foregoing entirely to correct the assumption of a romantic or sexual relationship, though we do sometimes call ourselves married. But let me try again to describe the Kasbah's architecture, which, though distinct, is not an architecture of distinction, in that the salient scale of analysis, I think, is in looking at the whole, the network of mutually constructed homes built leaning one against the other in inspiring density and material conservation, but which is also partly to blame for their frequent collapse. When one structure goes, it sometimes takes down another with it. But this also works inversely. The integrity of one building makes up for the fatigue of the others around it, acting as a truss, holding up the surroundings well past what would otherwise be their expected expiration. Do these tiered buildings of the Kasbah reflect or beget the social structure of their residents? Often 6 or so families living together, separate but doorless living in sleeping quarters. A stove or some other appliance might be made common, placed in the hallway that wraps around the center courtyard present on each level. Looking down from the roof where revolutionaries leapt to avoid arrest in the War of Independence from French colonial rule from November 1954 to July 1962, you can see the courtyard below, often lined with tile, ornamental wood banisters, potted plants, Ottoman-influenced archways. In 2019, writers at The Funambulist, a racy publication that, quote, engages with space and bodies, wrote an open letter urging French architect Jean Nouvel to revoke his recent contract to revitalize the Kasbah of Algiers. They wrote, Kasbah's urban fabric and architecture embody a powerful symbol of the struggles of those who can only use their passion and their environment against the asymmetrical forces opposed by the colonial armies and police. National Liberation Front revolutionary Yassif Saadi describes the relationship between the structure of the tight-knit coastal territory in this way. Located in the corner of the city, dominating the sea and its inextricable maze of alleyways, the Kasbah is a vast labyrinth on which are thousands of accesses and unexpected gateways, with its circular and ascendant urban configurations, with its dead ends, its anonymous and furtive doors, its inclined and intertwined walls. In short, with all its outlaw architectural features, the Kasbah is almost predestined to struggle and rebellion. Indeed, while researching the Kasbah, I found myself erring into ahistorical territory, thinking the people of Algiers' resistance to French occupation created the architecture of the Kasbah out of necessity, rather than 20th century Algerians retooling the pre-existent architecture to aid in their struggle for autonomy. For me, this invigorates the stakes and seriousness of design. There is no way to know how a built form will need to be used in the future, but the shapes of our creation will sometimes be asked an outsized request. In this instance, hiding, protection, and planning headquarters for FLN members, bewilderment and inconvenience for the occupying French troops. For a long time, I've maintained a curiosity about buildings and architecture, wanting to go inside them, but being disallowed this without a particular need for their use, which often requires a fee or an appointment. This wanting to be inside buildings has a lot to do with language and thinking, stemming from an intuition that certain thoughts can only happen inside certain textures, certain ceiling heights, qualities of light streaming through the windows placed in a certain way. Sensing the walls of certain rooms beg to echo a song you wouldn't otherwise sing.
Yeah.
Sometimes there is a premonition that desire requires a certain container, even if we haven't found it yet. So wanting to be inside buildings was also a desire to experience new thoughts, new realities, and new speculations on the future. I thought, perhaps if I could not be inside buildings, I could be inside the research of them. In one book I found called Welcome to Your World by Sarah Goldhagen, there was a lot written about the textures of buildings and how textures affect human behavior and psychology. I learned that natural building materials lead to calm psychosocial states. I learned things like PVC piping and plastic paneling, among other inorganic materials, sometimes make people feel ill or anxious. I wondered, was this a metaphysical relationship at play? I wondered if in some way we, little perception machines, can feel plastic's role in environmental degradation via its resistance to future decay, except through smaller and smaller but no less toxic units. And I wondered if the body could also perceive the exploitation of the workers that produced the piping, and if the sickness was an empathetic or solidarity sickness, a fed-upness of those conditions and the slipperiness of one person's plight into another's. This conflict around the impact of building materials on the human body might also be thought of as a problem of scale. The impact of the global predicament that produces and maintains harmful building materials and worker exploitation being expressed and experienced at the scale of the individual. Not just the individual worker producing the material or the rippling impact of their exploitation on their communities, but also on the individuals who encounter the materials after their production in a strange sort of poetic causality. When I sense I'm having trouble knowing where to, in the words of Mary Oliver, drop the knife blade of separation between myself and someone else, I think of the panel Lucian attended called Bad Boundaries during the first conference we attended together. It was hosted by two exes on the theme of queer enmeshment. The host described their panel in the following way: bad boundaries. They're symptomatic of immaturity, personality disorder, neediness, and or lesbianism. While certain kinds of boundary crossing, i.e. the blurring of gender binaries, the hybridizing of genre categories are celebrated in queer and innovative art and writing circles, it seems even, maybe especially, those of us most invested in these kinds of boundary refusals are at the same time concerned with maintaining healthy relationship boundaries and solid ethics on issues of privacy and consent. Though we also have suspect ethics. We divulge secrets from others' private lives, forge inappropriate intimacies, and force audiences to be complicit in our messy feelings. But inherent in our bad boundaries, we hope, is the potential for collaboration and connection, for a devaluation of the discrete subject and an embrace of overlap, multiplicity, and exchange. They then offered these signs that you might too suffer from bad boundaries. 1. You, like Dodie Bellamy, find yourself adopting an unlocatable first-person voice. 2. You, like Stephen Van Dyke, swap tales of financial and emotional woe with customer service agents over the phone and secretly air them on the radio. 3. You, like Sam Cohen, hate the idea of survival of the fittest enough to form a collaborative interspecies theory of evolution. I've elaborated this list with some Sunday theory sloppiness over which we oscillate between feeling embarrassment and a certain political defensiveness. 1. In spite of the awareness that a languageless break might be what's called for in a moment of group tension, the temptation to talk everything to death proves too alluring. 2. Maintaining a general unwieldiness with the perpetual negotiation of what we have come to call the 4-body, 2 and sometimes 3-dog problem. And 3. My insistence just this morning that Lucian and I blow our noses into a long shared tissue, Lady and the Tramp style.
Okay, I'm getting my glasses, but also using this as an opportunity to stretch, if you all want to do that, because it's a lot of sitting, and thank you for listening to us. And then I'll read the last one. Okay, mine starts with an epigraph too. It's from a part of a book that we read in the class that we were in together by Susan Buck Morris. Wish images innervate the technical organ of the collective, supplying it with nerve stimulation that prompts revolutionary action, like the child who learns the practical task of grasping by trying impossibly to catch the moon in its hands. I've been troubled by the center of this collection of essays, the words we've been using in the center, failure and collectivity. I consented to this center, entered it, but I was hiding something. Somewhere along the way, I've lost my interest in these words. Failure has failed me. I also feel certain that aspects of this feeling are shared among all of us in this group. And I worry that instead of using the experience of failure as a topic for these essays, we in fact wanted to use these essays to prove that we have not failed, which would be deceptive, or at least unskillfully performative. It's certainly true that if we all actually believed we had failed at collectivity, we wouldn't exist. Sunday theory would vanish from thought, habit, and yearning. But that there have been many smaller failures along the way, and what these failures are, and whether they are indeed failures that can be properly blamed on the collective, is up for debate. To convince you of the truth of these failures depends upon the extent to which you might believe the truth of our past desires for success. But desire cannot be expressed in past tense. My assigned topic for this essay is Sunday theory's failure to write the poetic statement. My argument is that we have not written a poetic statement, not because we failed to do so, but because we haven't wanted to. The questions of why we would assign ourselves a writing task that we don't want to write, or how we might grow within us a true desire to write a poetic statement, remain to be seen. But I feel certain that if we did want this, we would have no trouble writing it. You might be wondering why you should care to know about our little confusion here. You might be thinking, great, so you thought you wanted something and you sort of half-heartedly tried to make it, and then you realized that you didn't want it. What do you really want? But I will not and I cannot answer this question. Nor will I tell you the story of how we came to want what we really do want, for this would be dependent on the name of our desire, which has no name. Instead, I want you to consider with me whether or not true desire, and therefore true failure, is possible in a collective such as ours, and if so, what force it might bring to the world. In our meetings, Evelyn has lately been talking through her troubles with the help of a therapeutic concept called revealed preferences. She uses this tool when she feels frustrated with herself for agreeing to do something she doesn't end up doing. When this happens, her revealed preference is identified. For example, she may not have called the person that she keeps promising to call because she doesn't actually want to be in contact with the person she promised this to. The revealed preference is to cut contact with that person. Applying this to our story of failing to write a collective poetic statement, I could say that we have a revealed preference to not write a collective poetic statement. We put ourselves to the task, but we never did it. We can surely use this data to make future decisions, but I find several issues with this strategy, and the conclusions it might force upon us or foreclose to us, particularly in applying it to a collective. One issue is that the preferences it reveals are most often too general. Say you ask people to join you in a writing collective because you think that's what you want, and then you never make time to imagine what this collective is or could be. Never collect with the people you want to collect. You might come to the conclusion that you don't actually want to be in a writing collective, or not with these people, or not at this time. But which one is it? And if, for example, a coalescence occurs, such that 4 people take a long, spontaneous road trip together, and somewhere along the way, while sharing snacks with urgency and ease, they begin to recognize that the social atmosphere is especially generative for them. If in the car there is momentum to keep up the conversation, to traverse topics both familiar and uncomfortable, if they've been given the gift of shared texts to swim into and become afraid of, the need to look, and the superpower of on-command inflation so that one or another in the group can always stay above water and continue to breathe for us all for a while. If we each happen to be a clever digger of our own hole, and if in being together the holes that we each dig are revealed to be portions of the same big hole, so shared too are the secrets encountered in each personal excavation. And if it has something to do with language, and if it has something to do with writing, and if we feel vulnerable, if among us there is no doubt that each new question will be an amplification or remix of the last question, that each new question will open the gates to a field where the next question will have been growing. And if, like Moten and Harney write in their impressively co-written book about study and Black fugitivity, The Undercommons, we start to lose track of our debts and begin to see that the whole point is to lose track of them and just build them in a way that allows for everyone to feel that she or he or they can contribute or not contribute to being in a space. If all of these facts and more have been discovered at once, how might we practically name the preference that has been revealed with the specificity required in order to sustain and repeat it? I need I've got the dry now. On Sunday night, here at the lodge, Aaron described what he imagined of our writing together in relation to the Constitution. Said something like, "It's as if you all are constantly rewriting a Constitution that you never signed." This morning I noticed the state in statement. To write a statement of our poetics would require coming to a still point. And a still point is, because of our becoming a conversation which is endlessly in motion, impossible. Perhaps we mistook our desire to write a poetic statement with a desire to avoid the whiplash of finding and returning to each other again and again, the fatigue of close listening to maintain the groove, the nausea caused each time before we find the speed closest to the one that will keep us intact while we drive around the turns. Another issue with the revealed preferences model is something I know from experience, which is that it's quite possible for the body to do something that it doesn't want to do, to repeatedly choose an undesired object. If this happens enough, the body loses its ability to know the difference, loses its ability to recognize desire. When this happens to me, the numbness or dissociation prevents me from accessing clues or hints that might lead me to know what I want, which makes it impossible to learn from any experiment with expressed desires. When Sunday theory first formed, I had been feeling this pattern of numbness and dissociation deeply. I had been practicing it and felt clueless about how I would be able to reroute. On our first trip to LA, I marched along beside these three, and without realizing it, I began to develop an alarming yen for the world. An alternative route to my short circuit had been created. This shift in orientation or self-understanding, because of shared social space, seemed similar to a skill I learned in recovery, where I would follow along with people who are more functional until the rhythm of, in the case of my recovery, eating, becomes more comfortably ordered. But it differs in two ways. One, consciously following another group's order requires the group to have a recognizable order. And before the trip, none of us shared much of an order or social rhythm at all. Two, if on this trip I was indeed following my new friends, trying to find an order, the category of life that I was listening to order myself into remained unclear. How could I have known to look for Sunday theory when I still don't know what Sunday theory is? That we fell into step with each other on this particular path of life that we have so much difficulty categorizing was improbable. How could we have known to want what we got? V notices the polycarbonate material that the geodesic dome is mostly made up of has tiny horizontal ledges striping across it, so that when cut as triangles and placed together in polyhedra, the directions of the lines on each of the triangles create patterns. Some of the polyhedra have a sensical pattern with a clear center that the lines of the triangles splay out from. But because of the design of the dome, each triangle is part of not just one but three polyhedra. When put together, the triangles reveal preferences in their orientations, following a pattern of only one of their three polyhedra. V focuses on what this might mean about the necessity of choosing who we face, the constraints of our orientations. They liken the lines of the triangles to the directionality of our bodies, based on how many of our sensing organs are on our front side. Liken it to mean that you simply can't choose everything. You can't be looking in more than one direction at once. Therefore, the triangles choose to focus on the polyhedra that they face inwards towards. I would not have noticed this pattern without V, nor do I think I did their interpretation justice. But after seeing it, I immediately wanted the pattern to mean something else, or at least I wanted to mean something different with my seeing of it. I wanted to say that even if all the lines of the triangles in a polyhedron are askew, pointing outwards and inwards in distinct and uncoordinated directions, the shape of the polyhedron will remain strong. That the shape itself is what creates the shrink, and orientations of lines won't change that. I want to confess that a few days ago, this writing business felt extremely hopeless to me. Writing felt like decoration to a room that hadn't yet been dusted. That writing could hang around or about the room, but never be the room itself. It scares me to share this because much of my life is built around writing. But a few days ago, I was set on believing that writing is only ever violent, can only ever begin to cover up its dirty trail. And though writing continued to be my practice, I felt no life force in it. Writing itself, I wasn't sure why I did. The doubt I felt was not new, but the redemption was coming less frequently. An essay I began to write in our shared program at Evergreen before the spring break 8 years ago that marked our first foray into collectivity ends by asking for a new image of the dreamer, one that extends outside of the individual body. In this class, we'd read Walter Benjamin's theses on the concept of history, one of which describes and interprets the Paul Klee painting, Angelus Novus. This particular thesis fascinated me because it offered a contained disorientation to time and history as I'd known to understand them. He writes of the angel depicted in the painting, and this is Benjamin. His face is turned toward the past. Where we perceive a chain of events, he sees one single catastrophe which keeps piling wreckage and hurls it in front of his feet. The angel would like to stay, awaken the dead, and make whole what has been smashed. But a storm is blowing in from paradise. It has got caught in his wings with such violence that the angel can no longer close them. The storm irresistibly propels him into the future to which his back is turned, while a pile of debris before him goes skyward. It is necessary to choose who we share patterns with, given the constraints of our positions. But in Sunday theory, we are no longer trying to reach consensus on everything, no longer trying always to line up harmoniously before being visible to the outside world. We can each face distinct and changing directions and remain intact. Our differing orientations make our organism extra sensitive, skillful, strong. The process of being together, like that of living in any body, includes little tiny deaths. Dead skin flaking off, relationships changing. Little tiny failures drive us onwards. We need to account for those. That's why some of us look backwards, try to figure out what went wrong, why we lost, and what the losing means. Maybe failure is not the center for me. I've pushed it away and am looking towards desire, which for me needs to come before failure. But words are special in that they can easily be rearranged to fit the needs of those who use them. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It's really long. We'd love to talk about that stuff, probably not now.
Whatever you desire.
Wait, I actually just want to say just a word of thank you for Sou'Wester.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Everyone I've talked to has just been really blown away by the gift of time and space, and I'm just so, so grateful to everybody who made that happen, so thank you. Thank you.
I'd just like to say before I begin, this is a work in progress. The vehicle that operates me, known as Emily Jim Newton, is working on a new show, and, there'll be some times where she forgets what she's doing and has to play some stuff, and, it happens. So just go with it. Not a fun fact. Everything's the touch screen, and I made the horrible mistake of wearing gloves for a night. Go with
Welcome, one and all, to this very, very special night, the one night only, never to be seen again. The Vine Mature, his finest hour, a man capable of unbelievable panache and charisma. Beginning with his early career, the Strip, the Pack, the Luxor, the lounges, the scene, through to the midsection, and then the later years of reinvention and reinvigoration. His talent and showmanship, like a fine wine, has only gotten better through the ages. Tonight, we'll be playing all the hits, the best of the best, your favorites, and showcasing all his best moves that he made famous. He'll share behind-the-scenes stories, intimate details of a life lived with fame and fortune, moments only true fans are worthy of hearing. So, please join us, you VIPs, you very special people, you committed fans and followers, in a night of celebration and appreciation called Forever Frank. The moment you've all been waiting for. The man of the hour, the star, the legend, the myth, the world's most entertaining entertainer. Please welcome him to the stage. It's Frank! I'll be dancing till I'm dead. I'll be dancing till I'm dead. Moving my hips. I'll be tapping my feet. I'll be tapping my feet. Moving my hips. I'll be dancing. I'm dead.
I'll be dancing till I'm dead. I'll be dancing till I'm dead. I'll be moving my hips. I'll be tapping my feet. I'll be tapping my feet. I'll be moving my hips. I'll be dancing till I'm dead. Everybody! I'll be dancing till I'm dead. I'll be dancing till I'm dead. I'll be tapping my feet, I'll be moving my feet, I'll be moving my hips, I'll be dancing till I'm dead. And now, with the moves that I made famous, dance break! Pepper shaker, pepper shaker. Pepper shaker, pepper shaker. Pepper shaker, pepper shaker, pepper shaker. Everybody with me. Pepper shaker, pepper shaker, pepper shaker. Use your arm. Pepper shaker. Only twice. Pepper shaker, pepper shaker. Jane Fonda! Yeah. Jane Fonda! Jane Fonda! Yeah, yeah! You know it! You know it! Jane Fonda! Jane Fonda! These legs. Over here. Pam shaker. Jane Fonda. Pam shaker. Pam shaker. Yeah, now we're from the top. Pam shaker. Pam shaker. Jane Fonda. Yeah, you know it. Well, let me tell you something about fame here. Fame, fortune. They always want you. Yeah. This is one of my hits, 1977. Punch in the numbers. For what, you don't know this, but there's a whole computer system here. You don't put in the right numbers. I mean, things happen. It's bad. Well, one of my hits. Here we go. the big one, the 6-figure salary, back on the strip, back with the pack, you know? You know, the call, it comes. Just gotta wait for it. Yeah. Big with the manager, you know, the producer. You know? Yeah. You know, sometimes it takes a while, and sometimes you need another phone to add to the mix. Just forget I did that, but I do need this for the next part. You know, the call that you need, you know, the really important one. Let me tell you something about being famous. Sometimes it's about waiting, you know, just waiting around for the next thing. Because, you know, everybody wants a piece in the end, right? I'm right. I'm right. Yeah, I'm right. You know, just wait it out. Eventually they call, you know. Oh, yeah. Don't look back there. Oh. Yeah, okay. Just wait a second. Come on. Oh, it's the call. Yeah, that's me. It's really loud. Yeah, it's me.
I'm the biggest fan.
Oh, yeah.
Really, your own fan, like the one that loves you the most, you know. And did you get me a postcard?
Postcard?
Yeah. I'm under a carpet.
Carpet?
Oh, Frank, we can't wait to be together. Forever, Frank.
God, how did you get this number? This is the only my manager. How did you get this number? How did you get this number? Carpet. Good God. Let's be together forever. I'm your biggest fan. Okay. Moving on. Let's put this in the fire. No pictures. No pictures. None. No pictures. Yeah, exactly. No pictures. No pictures. Yeah, no pictures. And no posting. No posting on Instagram, social media, Twitter, Snapchat, OnlyFans, whatever. No posting. And no chanting my name over and over again. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for. Q&A. The world's most entertaining entertainer, Frank. Anybody got a question? Oh, yes, personnel fund.
Yeah, what do you do on the weekend?
Good question. You know, I like to go down to the islands and sit on a reclined state, you know, get some rays, sip on a whiskey soda, you know, with one of those large ice cubes. Yeah, sometimes I take my awards down, you know, and I place them around me. It's nice to feel loved. Yeah. Yeah, anybody else got a question? Yeah, got a question? Yeah. Anybody got a question? Question? Oh, yes.
I'm curious what your advice is for someone just starting out.
Oh, starting out.
What kind of feeling?
Oh, you're feeling it. Yeah, okay. Someone just starting out. Okay, don't move out of your parents' house. And don't spend money on things you don't need, like health insurance. Yeah. Keep your eye on the prize. Yeah. Keep going, okay? Yeah. Any other questions? Any other questions? Yes.
Frank,
Yeah.
I want to know what you think about
What? Who did that? Did you write that? What do I think about death? Well, I figure it's God's way of saying you're not alive anymore. One more question. One more question. Just, no, you're doing the thing. One more question. Anybody have a question? Yeah, definitely.
Famous poet Rilke once said, "A wise man only walks as far as his feet allow." How creatively rewarding and life-changing was it touring with Elvis 1955 throughout Europe? How did you maintain your professional work with the Rat Pack at the same time? Did your friendship with Bob Hope flourish because you were both so talented? Socrates once said, "A man is a man, as he is a man." Do you agree?
This shouldn't be playing right now.
How did Frank Sinatra feel when you overtook him in the 1969 Reader's Digest National Poll of Popularity? And how did that affect your Golden Globe nomination the following year?
Yes, not sleeping, hostile, good, and I don't remember. Dance break! Wrote the monkey. See the monkey. Wrote the monkey. Hey, let me know. Wrote the monkey. See the monkey. Wrote the monkey. Hey, from the top. Shake on the Roll the monkey. See one of the things I love about my long, successful, and famous career is it's the fans, those committed, like yourselves, VIPs, the real committed ones, the ones that have heard it all, been there through everything. And I'd like to do a little tribute, give back a little bit. So I'm gonna pay a little tribute to the fans. I have a little, with a little thing put together, great, the numbers in here. I'd like to take this moment to tell you a little story about my life, and I was in Europe with John Bon Jovi back many moons ago, and we were in Italy, and we were looking around for some pizza, you see, and we're all across the plaza, looking at this and that, and John says to me, Frank, I'm gluten intolerant, okay? I'm gluten intolerant, and I can't eat pizza. I said, don't worry about it, it's all in your mind. So, he kept going on about it, and so I eventually, we looked around, some fans, pointed us in the right direction, and what it came down to is that nobody was doing gluten-free pizza. So I just said to him, look, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. So we got the pizza, and I tell you what, the floor was a mess after that. Yeah, there's no real point to that story. Cheers. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Together forever. Together forever. And we'll be together forever. It's true. Be together forever with you.
Where was I? Talking about pizza or something like that. Well, what are you, who are you?
Oh, I'm your biggest fan.
Oh, God. How did you get in here? This is a closed event. It's VIPs only.
But I'm the biggest fan in the world.
Oh, okay, well, I love fans, so, okay, great.
You know, I've seen all your work. I've listened to all your albums. I've listened to them over and 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 over again and again and again and again.
Okay, well, great, that's wonderful, wonderful. But I'm in the middle of a show right now, so why don't you go into the green room and get yourself some snacks or something, you know, okay? Okay, great. All right, well, I'm gonna go over here and do my song and, excuse me. Okay. So look, here's the thing. I gotta go on the show and, I just can't have someone else on stage with me, okay? Okay, so let's say you go back there and we'll hook you up with some nice merch and stuff, okay? Okay, good. Oh my, okay, look. Look. I'm gonna do this because you're my biggest fan, okay? There's $100 hidden back there. And if you find it, you can keep it, okay? Great, okay, all right, good. So you go that way, and I'll go over here, and got my anthem from 1965. You know the one, okay? Is it hot in here? It's like sweating, you know, like, you hot? You hot? No. You hot? Yeah, I was sweating. Yeah, okay. All right, okay, here we go. All right. Yeah, you're into it, good. Lips, sex, lips, thighs, lips, sex, lips, thighs, lips, sex. Kiss me on my butt. Thighs, lips, sex, lips, thighs, lips, sex, lips, thighs, lips, sex. Kiss me on my butt. When you go to bed, think of me. When you go to bed, I'll be your lips, thighs, sexy butt. Lips, back, say butt. Kiss me on my butt. Where? Kiss me on my butt. That's right. Kiss me on my butt. Just kiss me on my butt. Below the 50. Just the back row. Kiss me on my butt. Just you. Okay. Kiss me on my butt. Everybody. Kiss me on my butt. One more time. Kiss me on my butt.
That was great, Frank.
Yeah, I know. Hey, look, what are you still doing here?
You know, I'm the biggest fan, and I just want to be everywhere you are.
Okay, but this is a solo show, so you gotta go, okay? Now. Well, what can I do to make you go away?
I want an autograph.
Okay, that seems reasonable. That's reasonable, right? Yeah, an autograph, okay. Has anybody got a pen? Got a pen? Anybody got a pen? Car key. Oh, you right there. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, where do you want the, oh, ow, I'm burning myself. Where do you want your autograph? Whoa! Okay, I'm gonna give you an autograph now. Okay?
Yeah, that was amazing.
Okay, you happy? You can go on your way now, okay?
No.
Look! Gotta get on with my stuff, okay? I'm in the prime of my life. You gotta go!
I want a dance.
A dance. Okay, I gotta dance. I know how to do that. Yeah, okay, I'll do a dance. And that's it. Okay? Okay? Okay, all right then. I'm about to burn down the place. I'm gonna try and do this as eloquently as possible. Okay. Do this one, that's it. Oh, I'm gonna put my bloody passport in, Face ID, and oh God! Okay. Dance. All right, why don't you come out? Yeah, you want to go out here? Okay. Is it playing? It's not even playing. I don't work with technology. Okay, you want to come out? Yeah? Okay, out here? Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Now slow dance? Okay, all right. Excuse us. Excuse me. That's nice. Yeah. Okay. into that, and the new thing that I'm exploring. I'm curious. One thing I'm very interested in is what people get from this. And if any, like, you know what it is. If anything comes to mind, just yell it out. What it symbolizes, what it could symbolize.
Is that how Andy Kaufman got his start?
I don't know who that is.
I feel like Frank has a very I don't want to feel like I'm kink shaming anyone, but
Healthy habit.
a questionable notion of what sex is. But
So, do you feel like this is a sexual relationship?
Self-love and shame of that. Self-love, self-hate, like,
self-sabotage.
Self-sabotage.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I mean, but the relationship happens after the pills. So, I'm trying to figure out where he's at. You know what I mean? Like, 'cause it seems like it's a, part B, or, like a second after the pills.
Is there enough connection between the phone call, the postcard, and the appearance?
The video really helps with the faces.
Okay.
He's become so famous that his personality is shattered.
Ooh, okay. I'm just going to tell you it's supposed to symbolize death, but okay, great. So hit that one out of there. Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup because we have Callie Nesbitt next with an amazing piece.
Yeah.
So please stick around. I will be hanging around after ID Frank. And if we talk more about this, I would love to talk about it.
Yeah.